Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the July 17th edition of Effective, Efficient, Affordable, and Above All Accountable to You. The show that reminds you this coming Saturday is Referendum Day. Head to the polls, ladies and gentlemen, and if you vote like us, you will be voting no.
8 to 8, Pearson School. The absentee ballot time is essentially passed if you're trying to do it by mail. But what you can do, is I've said before on the program, is you can personally go to the town clerk's office. You can get an application. You can fill the application out right there. You can then turn the application in. She will make a ballot up for you. You can take the ballot in the back room. And then you can vote and seal the ballot and turn it into the clerk if you're not going to be here on Saturday. So can't do it by mail, not enough time, but you can do it in person if you're not going to be here Saturday and you are in Winsted either Wednesday, Thursday, or half a day Friday morning.
So the main topic of this evening's show will be, we will be explaining to you why we will be voting no this coming Saturday at the referendum. We will be explaining to you why we think it makes sense for you to vote no, not simply out of a desire not to see your taxes go up, but out of a desire to actually see our town put back on the right course. Before we get there, before we tackle the main subject of this evening's show, wanted to spend just a couple of minutes reviewing yesterday's Board of Selectmen meeting, which was, as they say, instructive as always. Present at the meeting last night was Vanessa Recito, the lead partner on our audit team. She was here for a different reason. But as part of the discussion, disclosed that the audit is continuing to proceed. This is the audit for the year ended June 2011. It was due last December. It is 7 months late at this point. A preliminary sort of draft version of her document exists. She gave us a few clues as to what will be in it. Bottom line, she described the financial position of Winsted as dire. She described it as dire for two reasons fundamentally. Number one, for 10 years we have ignored the advice of our auditors with respect to the imposition of financial controls. And number two, for 10 years we have spent. She indicated that preliminarily, and all of this is very preliminary, the year ended June 2011 will see another significant decline in the fund balance. She did not indicate where that decline is coming from or the precise order of magnitude of that decline. But gave us to believe that it was significant. Declines in our fund balance, unless they're actually budgeted, come from overspends. So it looks like we're looking at yet another year of overspending here in Winsted. The second thing that she alluded to was the fact that she could not with any confidence say at this point in time that we have a positive fund balance. We may be technically bankrupt as of this moment in time. She did make reference to the charter revision vote that we took several years ago that we've referenced on this show to combine finance staffs. That has been dismissed by the school board as inherently impossible and has been dismissed by our mayor as illegal. She reinforced the idea that it is very legal, that Connecticut municipalities have been doing this for many years, decades in the case of some, and it is a subject that is a topic of keen discussion amongst virtually every municipality in the state, every municipality apart from Winsted, it would seem. Lastly, she told us to forget about borrowing. The combination of the incredible disappearing fund balance and 10 years worth of continued inability to put numbers together in a timely fashion essentially precludes us from borrowing money. This is the situation as our auditor sees it at this point in time. Three very different reactions from the selectmen. Mayor Perez, former Mayor Perez, I should say, actually gave a fairly forthright acknowledgement that the wolf is at the door. In Mayor Perez's words, bankruptcy is a possibility. It is perhaps more than a possibility. It is a likelihood at this point in time. This is a responsible statement, ladies and gentlemen. Bankruptcy is probably a likelihood. We have to accept that is at the root of the problems facing our community, because without accepting that, we cannot solve these problems. At the other end of the extreme, Selectman DeVita, having apparently not quite understood the idea that we couldn't borrow money, volunteered that perhaps we should bond money instead, that if borrowing was impossible or too expensive, bonding was undoubtedly a cheap alternative. Yes. And then Mayor Welcome and Selectman Clausen, they don't believe there is a crisis. They don't think that there is anything out there that would lead them to change strategies. They believe that increasing spending is the right response to having too great a cost and not enough money. They believe that Winstead is too big to fail and that you, the taxpayers, will bail them out. They believe that Winstead deserves a bailout on the back of the property taxpayers. They believe in business as usual. So that's really the background to this evening's budget discussion. A Board of Selectmen that has wildly different reactions to a very real crisis, a crisis which we would hope in a better world this budget would be addressing.
Well, let's do this. Let's spend a little time. I went down to the assessor's office. We will update the sales from the 1st of March 2012 to the 30th of June 2012. 4-month period, 37 sales.
Not much.
Real barn burner. 4 were sale of foreclosures. 6 were at the lake. 4 were in Winchester. 4 commercial properties, which includes the 2 parcels on Gay Street where the senior housing is going to be built, and 1 industrial. I'll break it down into my area. There were 4. 97 Hinsdale Avenue, appraised at $114,940, sold for $75,000 in foreclosure by sale. 5052 Cottage Street, 83,160 appraisal, sold for $29,000. Once again, foreclosure. 266 Oak Street, 121,380 appraisal, 111,000 sale price. 416 Horn Avenue, 118,790 appraisal, sold for $98,000. When you total them up and you look at the discount's approximately 30%.
So it's not as big as we've seen in some quarters, but when you're looking at a 30% decline in value in a very close-knit geographical area, you're looking at a catastrophe.
Well, let's give the flip side now. Let's go to the lake. Okay, and I included 6 properties at the lake: East Wakefield, West Wakefield, Forest Avenue, Woodland, East Wakefield, and East Lake. So 820 East Wakefield, appraised $148,470, sold for $230. 127 West Wakefield, small cottage, 107, 210 appraisal, sold for $50. 134 Forest Avenue, 171, 780 appraisal, sold for $199,900. 22 Woodland, 95, 410 appraisal, sold for $108,500. 668 East Wakefield, waterfront, 246, 330 appraisal, sold for $275. And 91 East Lake Street, 630,530 appraisal, sold for $919,000. So the stuff at the lake on the waterfront is going up. Totals, the appraisal is $1,400,000. The sale price was $1,782,000, 27% premium. Stuff in Winchester, there were 4 in Winchester. 1 was a parcel of 19.3 acres on Newfield Road. No buildings, 161, 840 appraisal, $140,000 sale price. 166 Rug Brook, 225, 610 appraisal, sold for $227. 102 Rug Brook, 177, 520 appraisal, sold for $236, 800. And this one, I don't know if it should be here or not. 102 Chapel Road, it's supposedly an old church. It had an appraisal of $329, 350, and sold for $110. Don't know what the sale was, whatever. But if you throw that one out, it's holding about at the appraisal price. If you throw that one in, it's down about 20%.
So what we're looking at, ladies and gentlemen, again, is continued stability, perhaps even some upward price movement on the premium properties on the lake. And everything else flat to down, and in the case of downtown, that is down big, both residential, commercial. We are looking at declines, depending which quarter you take, of anywhere from 25 to 50%. We've seen the impact of this as we've gone through the math to say, what does that do to taxes generally? It means everyone's tax rate goes up, number one, because the grand list is declining. It means the share of taxes borne by downtown in dollar terms goes down, but that the proportion of taxes on any individual property downtown goes up.
So you have a lower valued property which can't pay more taxes, paying more taxes.
This obviously will lead to greater levels of distress downtown, greater levels of abandonment, greater levels of difficulty in selling a home downtown. In the periphery of town, the reverse will obviously be the case. We will see a greater proportion of the taxes moving into those areas. So what we're seeing is a shift from downtown to the outlying area, but the shift from downtown is not sufficiently large to compensate the downtown residents for their loss in value. It's a situation in which everyone loses. There are no winners in the context of this reval.
And if you phase it in, you essentially ensure that you'll have abandonment downtown.
Right. Now, you could look at this in two ways. You could look at this as what is the impact on any given taxpayer. And I think we've demonstrated week in and week out that the impact on taxpayers generally is somewhere between very unpleasant and catastrophic. You can also look at it from the perspective of what underlying problem is this a symptom of? The underlying problem is clearly a shrinking of the grand list generally, and a collapse in the viability of our downtown neighborhoods and our downtown commercial zone. From the perspective of the community, this is finding yourself in a rock and a hard place. As your grand list shrinks, you simply cannot pay as much in taxes. It means you have to do something on the service side of the equation, the cost side, the spending side, just to keep the playing field level. From the perspective of someone living in this community, the loss of our downtown neighborhoods, the loss of our downtown, of our Main Street downtown, is the loss of the guts of this community.
Yeah.
What is a town if not for its urban core, its local residences, and the life of its Main Street?
The difference here in Connecticut from just about everywhere else is everywhere else, and by that I mean other states, California, whatever, is they take the value of the house, the appraised value of the house, and they multiply it by a percentage, and that's your tax. That's the revenue that the municipality gets, and if the revenue goes down, they adjust. Here, the way it's set up is that the revenue goes down, and we just jack the mill rate up to generate the same amount of, the value of the property goes down, we jack the mill rate up to generate the same amount of revenue. You can't do that because the pressure on the properties forces abandonment.
So, I mean, just to draw an easy analogy for folks at home, if your monthly income coming in is $1,000 and your monthly grocery bills and your utility bills and your gas bills and your beer bills and everything else is $1,000, you can survive. If your income drops, they're the equivalent of a shrinking grand list, to $800, and your grocery bills and your utility bills and your gas bills and your car and all the rest of it goes up, suddenly you're in the red. Now, a responsible adult says at that point, I have to trim my expenses. Let's start with the frivolous ones. Let's start with the beer money. I need the car to get to work. Without getting to work, I don't have any income at all. So let's cut out the beer money, and maybe that will bring us back into equilibrium. They don't say, let's go drink even more beer. That's not what the responsible homeowner does when faced with a shortfall. They cut. They cut to the point where they can afford to pay the bills. And having done that, they make sure that the bills are correct, that they're not paying too much for stuff. They don't, again, to use an analogy, they don't go and give the superintendent of schools a 13% pay raise. They don't go and say, we can't consolidate finance functions because that's illegal when other towns are actually doing it. These are all instances of waste. This is a situation where not only do we have to cut simply to get our expenses in line, but we need to examine areas where we're wasting money. We're spending money badly. We're either spending too much for the right thing, or in many cases, too much for the wrong thing. This is what the problem that we face is. The cost of our services is too high. It has exceeded the ability to pay.
You need a reduction. You have to reduce, you have to restructure, and then you have to look at where you want to put your money to reinvest.
Right. What the budget should be doing, the budget that we could support, will be a budget that, as John says, starts with reduction. It starts with saying, if we have X amount of income, we can't spend more than X. That's got to be the place you start.
You have a significant drop in your grand list. You cannot expect to get the same amount of money out of a smaller grand list and have it be viable. You have to reduce. There's just no way around it anymore.
Having reduced, having got to the point where your spending is at least equal to or less than the amount of money coming in, the amount of money that the taxpayers can pay, then you have to look at, are we spending the money wisely? Are we buying the right services? Are those services structured in a way that we get the most for our money?
And we've offered a lot of suggestions on this program. I mean, we can do a lot with the schools. We can do a lot with the college. There is, a mentality here that it has to be built and maintained in Winsted, and that's just no longer the case. There's not enough critical mass to support a lot of the services that we're delivering, especially on the education side, and you need a partner. You need a bigger partner.
Right. We need to start spending smart. Areas of duplication, they've got to go. Areas of waste, they've got to go.
I mean, you've mentioned it earlier, at the state level, insurance is just for the state employee. The state employee buys a family plan for the family. Here in Winsted, we insure everybody.
Right.
Can't do that anymore.
It would be a wonderful thing if we could afford that. It would be a wonderful thing if the taxpayers of this town collectively said, that is something we would like to do for the employees. We feel sufficiently comfortable that we would like to pay the employees in our town on a basis that far exceeds what other people in other sectors are paid. A set of benefits that no one else in the United States gets anymore. If we could afford to do that, if we collectively decided to do that, that would be one thing. But no one can afford to do that. No one is being given the opportunity to make that decision. The opportunity to make that decision is this Saturday when you vote against a budget that perpetuates something that we simply can't afford. When having reduced, having restructured, having cut that waste, having streamlined those services, having, if need be, trimmed services, if there are things we simply can't afford, we then have to reinvest. We have to reverse the problem that we started out with, which was the declining grand list and the looming catastrophe that is our downtown. And the way we reinvest is through development, and we incentivize that through tax incentives. We've got to start with the downtown neighborhoods. Let's get these.
And that's what's missing. I mean, when you go and you look at the budget, and you've done it for 3 weeks now, it's $1 million plus, and it's essentially no capital improvements. It's salaries, benefits, and retirement plans.
Yeah, I mean, let's just revisit, as we did last week, what is actually in the budget we're voting on. It's $930,000 of a tax increase. $930,000. Where is that going? The school's budget is flat, same as last year. In the context of, again, the 13% pay raise for the superintendent, in the context of failing to close a school, failing to achieve those savings, failing to consolidate the finance department, that means there's less money going to teaching. If that's what you want, that's fine. That's a legitimate budget, if that's what you want.
But it doesn't get you anything.
It buys you nothing, and you're spending your money on something that is not core to the task of the schools, teaching. All of the money is on the town side, the vast majority of it on people, the vast majority of that on benefits. Benefits is the area of greatest increase. It's the area we have least control. And yet we've structured our entire budget to be benefit heavy. This makes no sense. This is not a long-term solution to any problem. It's not a short-term solution to a problem. It's not a medium-term solution to a problem. It's embracing the problem and saying, woohoo, business as usual, we love it. Why should we change? Crisis? What crisis? The crisis is real. You see the crisis downtown.
The people are standing up now. Your auditor stood up and said, you got to change. We're sitting here saying you have to change. You got to deliver the message on Saturday, 8 to 8, vote no, we got to change. I mean, you can't go forward doing what we're doing any longer. The stakes are too high. If you approve any of these budgets without a reduction in spending, the flip on the reval, and next year you'll have a catastrophe. You have to start, and now is the time to start.
Right. Because we've seen what happens with a bankruptcy. We now have so many towns in the last year that have hit bankruptcy. We know exactly what happens. It's mass firings, it's mass pay cuts, it's mass loss of benefits, all of it overnight. None of it planned, none of it planned for, no one gets any notice. It just happens overnight. And it's mass tax increases. And throw into that mix all of the loss of services that takes place, all of the loss of maintenance that takes place on public buildings, all of the loss of confidence in the business community, and you have a recipe for a very unsatisfactory community. This should not be something to flirt with. This should not be something that we say, it will probably be okay. This is something that's will be very nasty if and when it happens. And the only way for it not to happen is for us to begin to take concrete, constructive steps. We have to bring the spending in line with the ability to pay, in line with your ability to support a budget. We have to do it. We have to make sure that that spending amount is well spent. That means no waste, no duplication, and it means getting your audits done on time, getting the financial disclosure to a state where you, the people, understand where the money is being spent, where you have confidence that it is being spent well, that it is buying us something of value, that we as a community are benefiting from it. And it means reinvestment. We have to start to reverse the decline downtown. We have to stabilize our downtown neighborhoods. Only by doing that can we make the Main Street attractive for business. Right now, for a business person to come to Main Street, where are the customers? The customers are fleeing. If we are able to reverse the decline in the downtown neighborhoods, we will make the return of business to Main Street more likely. If we can do those two things, we will make redevelopment of the mills more likely. If we can do those three things, we will have a grand list that is rising. We will have more money in town, more money in the stores. We will have greater revenues as the town, buying greater services, probably at lower tax rates, because there'll be more people paying the taxes. The task is not an easy task, but it is a simple task. We know what we have to do. It's just a question of doing it. I give full credit to Mayor Perez for saying, we have a problem. We have to acknowledge the problem. But the trouble is...
That's the first step right there, and the selectmen haven't acknowledged it. And it's your job, the public's job on Saturday to go and vote no. You have to do that because they have to address, first they have to accept the problem, then they have to address it.
Right. And again, whether you choose to vote from your personal perspective as I don't want to pay more taxes, or you choose to vote from the perspective of I would like to live in this community long term, I would like to see this community turn around, I would like to see this community be a vibrant, prosperous, sustainable community, the answer is the same in both cases. The answer is no. Because only by voting no can we send this thing back to the drawing board. Can we send the selectmen yet another message that says, you gotta do the right thing. We, the people, expect you to do the right thing. We are going to be looking over your shoulder, demanding that you do the right thing. Because that's what Winsted deserves. That's what you deserve, and that's what we should be getting. On a completely separate and different note, We've been asked to throw a quick shout out for the Soldiers Monument. It will be open on August 4th for a reenactment day. Reenactors will be there 1, 2, 3 in the afternoon, August 4th. It should be a fun afternoon out for everyone here in town, and an opportunity for people to understand that there is more to Winstead than budgets that don't work.
And the monument will be open.
The monument will be open. Take the opportunity to go up there, look down on the town, and see what it is that we could turn around. This coming Saturday, July 21st, 8 to 8, Pearson School, vote no. Vote no so that we will have the opportunity to redo this thing and to do it right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
We will see you after the referendum.